Thought I'd check out this Chinese scooter carburetor. The vacuum diaphragm has been replaced. I've bought a replacement for it now with from Scrappy Dog Scooters, which is pretty much a Chinese replacement. Very inexpensive, didn't cost much, but I don't think the Chinese ones last too long. The rubber's maybe not quite up to par with some of the other diaphragms that are out here. So about 5 years ago, I put a JBM diaphragm in here, made by JBM.com. It's a JBM Industries is a local Ohio place that makes these things. And anyways, why I can check the slide to see if it goes up and down. A little piece of wire, maybe you can see here, but it seems to, if you can see in there, seems to go up and down pretty smoothly. I don't see any problems with that. One thing you want to watch for is if they get old and hard, and this diaphragm doesn't seem like it is. So I'm going to take it apart and have a look at it. Okay, seems like this diaphragm's in pretty good shape. I don't see any holes in it. The markings on it are SW and 60. I believe the 60 is how many millimeters in diameter the diaphragm is. I don't remember what SW stands for, but I remember when I got it, I couldn't find one that was quite the right size. And this one was just a little bit too big, I think. It didn't fit just exactly right, I know that, but it was the closest size I could find that JBM had, that they stocked. And I just glued it to the slide here. And for 5 years, it stood up pretty well, I think. It's not too bad at all. And I don't see any holes or tears in it. I think it's in pretty good shape. So I guess I could put it back in there and run it another 5 years. As far as I can see by looking at it, it certainly isn't getting old and hard, and I wouldn't say it's soft and punky either. It seems like it's in pretty good shape. So I'm pretty sure it was working just fine. But this is the Chinese version. I would imagine that the needles are the same taper and everything, although I'll measure them to make sure. But this is the Chinese replacement that I got, and this one probably will fit the way it's supposed to in there. So this JBM one is just a little bit on the big side, but I didn't really have any trouble getting it together, and it worked just fine in there. So pretty pleased with the way that held up. Anyways, I don't know how long these held up, but this one, the first one I had in there that was a Chinese one, probably lasted about maybe 4 years, I guess, was in there. But it was in pretty bad shape and very hard. It got hard as a rock. So we'll just see what this does. While on the subject of these Chinese scooters, I've got one here off of it's a Lance scooter. It's about a 10-year-old scooter. It had a lot of anti-pollution controls and things on it, which I've removed. I've capped off some of these vacuum lines here, but I think it was probably made to be able to sell in California and so forth. But one of the things that I found that slowed down the scooter, or was designed to slow it down or possibly reduce the power, maybe even act as a little engine governor so you couldn't over rev it much. This crazy thing here, which is just a sheet metal stamping, was inside of this rubber intake manifold. These little barbs here sticking out the sides of it, they're what held it in there. The idea being that if air went through there faster and faster, it would start swirling it around. And of course, in the end, you get so much turbulence that if it tries to draw air too fast, it's going to restrict it. So I think the purpose of this thing is kind of a little governor. It might have been to limit this thing to 5 horsepower for some crazy law or something like that. I don't know. At any rate, I'd say anybody that has an old scooter or one that they think is limited on horsepower ought to check inside the rubber intake manifold for one of these restrictors to see if it has anything like that. It really surprised me, because that really is going to hurt the performance. Now this insulating block here, I just lapped that with a piece of sandpaper. You can do it on a piece of plate glass or a ground surface such as a table saw table or something like that, something that you know is flat. And you could use a piece of sandpaper and you just put it on there and lap it around a little bit, and you can turn this into just like a brand new surface. These things do tend to get compressed, and if you don't lap them once in a while, what's going to happen is it's going to pull these ears down here from tightening the nuts on it and bolts all the time. It'll bend those a little bit, and they'll get bent down, and then you'll need to lap this surface on the end of the carburetor to get that flat. So it's an easy thing to fix. All you have to do is lap it with a piece of like 180 sandpaper, and you can get that thing just like new.